Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. I'm your host, Kiera Dent, and I have this crazy idea that maybe I could combine a doctor and a team member's perspective because let's face it, dentistry can be a challenging profession with those two perspectives. I've been a dental assistant, treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, office manager, regional manager, practice owner, and I have a team of traveling consultants where we have traveled to over 165 different offices coaching teams. Yep, we don't just understand you, we are you. Our mission is to positively impact the world of dental, and I believe that this podcast is the greatest way I can help elevate teams, grow VIP experiences, reduce stress, and create A-teams. Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. Hello, Dental Team listeners. This is Kiera, and you guys, I have an incredible guest today that I am super excited. He's been on the podcast before, and this is a man that I love because we will rally back and forth on all things investing, different ways to help dental practices. He is a brilliant man, and I love all the things he brings to the table. So we're going to welcome Derrick Van Ness from Big Life Financial. Derrick, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Kiera. Excited to be here, as always.
I love it. I am a little disappointed that your background's not the bricks. Have you not gotten your bricks back up in the background? I mean, that's what I expect when I see you, Derrick.
I know. I still have the bricks. They're folded up in the corner. I moved into a new house last year and have been traveling like crazy back and forth with family and all kinds of things. So, yeah, haven't put the bricks up. I haven't decided if I'm going to do bricks in the new studio here.
I mean, I do enjoy the white though. I think it does have a nice zen feel, but
Yeah.
I knew the bricks were a conversation from the last time we podcasted. So, but Derrick, guys, is genius. He was just at our summit, super appreciative of him and our support. So many offices reached out, but what was cool, and I thought we'd bring it to the podcast a little bit, was I had Derrick come on with a couple other financial people. So I was explaining that in your financial Rolodex as business owners and as practices, and I didn't realize this as an office manager or as an owner, that you need to have different people in your financial repertoire. So you need your bookkeeper, and they need to be your day-to-day transactions and things like that. Then you've got to have your CPA, then you've got your tax strategist, and then financial advisors. And there's a few other things beyond that, but to me, those are kind of the core four that I'd recommend you have. Derrick, would you agree with that? Are there any, I'm not the financial person. This is just how I was explaining it. Do you feel like it's the core four, or are there maybe a sexy six? How many should we actually have in there?
Well, I definitely think if you have those four, they're all essential in their own way. And there's slight bits of overlap with some of that because investments and tax strategy and some of that stuff does interplay. But if you have those four, you've got the basics. And then, on top of that, you might have a business coach or consultant, right? I think that's absolutely vital. And then maybe if you haven't done estate planning or if that hasn't happened in a long time, that's one of those things that's maybe not inner circle, but most dentists do well enough that it makes sense to really get the estate planning piece figured out because, things happen.
Mm-hmm. And Derrick, on that note, because I just did my trust and estate, and that was really weird and creepy to be upon my death, this is it felt disgusting. I'm great.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? YOLO now. At what point, do you feel like there needs to be a certain financial threshold that people should be at? Or is it once you buy a practice, you should have a trust? Because for me, it was oh, our house, I only put it under my husband's name. Don't worry. When we were signing on title, they're are you sure? And I'm yeah, I'm sure. And they're but if something happens to him, you don't have the house. And I'm what's my worst case scenario? And they're well, if he's got someone else. And I'm if he's got someone else, he takes the house. I don't care. I don't need it. We're good. But I started realizing if something happened to me, my business and my team weren't going to be protected because it was all associated to Kiera and not within my estate and trust. So is there a certain level, Derrick, that you recommend? And then I'll get back on track with this core four, almost up to the sexy six. I mean, you did give us six, so I think we could say sexy six, but
I like that.
Should people have that estate in place?
Well, there's a couple basic things, right? Of course, if you have, everybody should have a living will in my opinion, of course, right? So that people know what your wishes are. And once again, it feels a little morbid, but it can keep the family from fighting. If you're in a situation where do they keep you plugged in? Do they pull the plug? What do you want done? What are your wishes? It can really help a lot. I think everybody needs that. I think if you have children, of course, guardianship of your children, 100%. And then when we get into basics of assets, I think once you have a house or you have some substantial life insurance, a real asset, if someone's just coming out of school and has student loan debt and they're single and everything, it's probably less important. But as soon as you have a real asset, I think you definitely need the basics of a basic will, a basic trust. And then once you start to get some substantial assets, and I would say, let's call it in excess of a couple $100,000 of equity of stuff being built up, or a successful business that's producing and has assets, then I would definitely look at that next tier, which is where you start getting a little bit more into, um, it's not just like, oh, we're going to dump all this money on our husband or wife or kids if we pass, but starting to look a little bit more multi-generationally, starting to look at, okay, do I want to dump this in their lap, or is there a better way to put these assets to work so that they can create income that can support the types of things that we want our family to do? And the big thing with estate planning, because I read a decent amount of books on this, is it really comes down to estate planning is traditionally about reducing taxes, right? Getting money from generation A to generation B and not getting beat up in probate and all the taxes that can happen. But the reality of legacy is it's about including your family, it's about including your kids, it's about being an example while you're alive, so that when these assets do pass to them, they're a gift, not a burden. If I'm honest with you, like 80 to 90% of people who get sizable estates, it ends up being more of a curse than a gift because they're not ready for it. And all of a sudden they've got all this money. They don't know how to handle it. They haven't had practice managing it. It can be a real problem. So I think the big thing with all of that is starting to become aware, figuring out what you want to pass on as a legacy in the form of values, in the form of um, things that you've learned in your life and wisdom. If you do that and you really focus on that, create some structure around that, good estate planning will supplement the tax part. But to me, a true estate plan, and once you have real assets, you should be doing this, includes that passing on of values, wisdom, some structure to be having those conversations. Everybody wants to protect, quote unquote, protect their kids, protect their spouse from money and taxes and all the, that kind of stuff. That is not preparing them for the world. And so I think if you want to have success, you need to be having these conversations. Nobody wants to talk about taxes. Nobody wants to talk about when I pass away. Nobody wants to talk about the dirty business of like the metrics in your business and stuff. But truly, like that's all the mortar that hold the bricks together. And I feel like you're not doing anybody any favors if you're not having those conversations. So that's my 2 cents.
No, I think that that's really wise advice and I appreciate it. This is why, guys, I love Derek. I love the financial people at Summit. We brought on financial experts. And of course, there is a little overlap, but I've
Mm-hmm.
just found that making sure you've got a good group of people around you to help. But gosh, as you were saying that, I just thought about these estates and it is weird. But I also talked about a study where they looked at like there was this game and they realized that in like not knowing was actually more stressful than knowing. So you not knowing what's going to happen to you when you pass away actually causes an underlying stress. It's more stressful than having the conversations. You not knowing what's going on in your business actually causes more stress than knowing, even if the numbers aren't great, even if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look good. Like there's statistics that have proven this and studies been done. So it's one of those things where I agree with you. I think that the estates and the planning and the financial planning, but I also like that you talked about when you have real assets, that's when you need to do it. It was awkward and uncomfortable for me. I never thought that I was like grown up enough. I'm like, that's what my parents do. But I do believe that having that protected, it's a lot easier for me. I'm like, if I go in a plane and I died tomorrow, team would be taken care of, my family would be taken care of. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worried that this work that I put in to give to the podcast community, to give to the dental community, just going to go away because it's associated just with me. So I really think if you care about your patients and you care about, like to me, it's about the families, but I also love that you talked about not having it be a curse to your family too. And
Mm-hmm.
so on that note, Derek, this is like very off topic, but I am curious because there is a buzz right now going around the book Die with Zero. What are your take on like Die with Zero versus having like an estate? Because the whole premise of Die with Zero, for those of you who haven't read it, is that we basically spend all of our money. We're not really building up generational wealth and we're like living life. Of course, it's not like you're supposed to die with zero. You're not sitting here for retirement. I've got like weird feelings because I think we're going to live until we're 120 years old. So that gets exciting. We'll all be working as like 100-year-old people at all the stores because we spend all of our money. But like, what's your take on this? Like, die with zero, because you do a lot of financial planning, you do a lot of investments, you do ERC, so employee retention credits, and R&D, research and development, which is a huge tax savings for businesses. But like, what's your take on building up wealth versus dying with zero? Just from like a fun, juicy topic to hash with you.
Well, what I'm going to say may not be sexy, but I really think it's a personal choice. I think some people, um, want to spend every bit of it, and that's totally fine. And I think there's some merit to that if you're having a conversation with your family and saying, hey, listen, my spouse and I, we're going to spend all of this because we want you guys to make your own way. As long as that conversation's being had and you're really doing it from a place of, you know what, my kids, I want my kids to really have the full life experience. That's great. Other people, it's really important to them to pass assets onto their kids because they've been through some really tough stuff and they don't want their kids to go through maybe third world problems, maybe second or first world problems and have to go through some of that. Because there's no question when you're really struggling financially, it can be really disheartening. And, a lot of people don't get out of that hole. So I
Mm.
think, I think it's a personal choice, but I don't have a problem with it. But the truth is, like, it's really tricky to manage. When exactly am I going to die and how am I going to end up with zero? I'd rather have extra because otherwise those last couple of days might be a little scary. So I'm just a believer in do the things that create a powerful mindset for you. Do the things that make your life higher quality. So if higher quality is I don't want to worry about passing it on and I'm going to, live my life in such a way that that's not a problem, that's great. If you want to go multi-generational and that feels makes you feel really powerful and you use that as a catalyst to help your spouse and your children and their children to really think about the world in a powerful way, then I think that can also be really advantageous. So I think ultimately it comes down to what creates the most powerful mindset for you, what creates a higher quality of life, because that's the game we're playing. It's not a money game, it's a quality of life game.
Mm. Derek, you gave me and my husband some really solid advice. I actually think of you often on, you said, Kiera, there's always the financial ROI, but there's an emotional ROI, which there is no number that you can put in there. It really is this emotional ROI. And so that has stuck with me so much because I'm like, my financial advisor, Ryan Isaac with Dennis Advisors, he's like, holy bank accounts, Kiera. Because I have like squirrels of like all my savings accounts, and I'm like profit first guru to the like nth degree. And he was like, should we consolidate any of these? And I'm like, it gives me an emotional ROI where I know and I can sleep well at night that I've got money for the business and I've got money for Jason and I've got money for this. And I
Hmm.
know what I have there, even though it seems psychotic to a lot of other people. But you really help me see that the decisions I make, and I also do think a lot of our financial decisions truly are associated with emotions more than they are of what makes sense on paper. That's why people sell when the stock market goes down, even though
Yeah,
they should
yeah.
hold. Like, it's just one of those things where I think there's a lot more emotion. So, Derek, you and I, we've had quite a few awesome conversations, but I think you came really hot into Dental A Team's group. We had a doctor mastermind in January, so we've started new things, guys. We have our one-on-one consulting, but I also wanted to build a community. So our doctors all get together once a month, just solely to talk doctor and business and strategy, and then office managers get together once a month as well. So it's been really fun to build this. And Derek, without you being at one of these masterminds, ERCs came up as a really hot topic,
Hmm.
because the conversation that we were having together as a group, and I won't share all of it because it is an intimate group and it is private for our team, and our clients. But the idea was, how do we prepare for the economy? How do we prepare for this potential economic downfall? Like, what can we be doing as business owners today? And one of the members said, like, ERCs and R&D are great tax strategy things, which is honestly why I refer so many people to you, Derek, is because you
Hmm.
have helped people get a lot of money ethically. And there's a lot of people out there doing ERC and R&D that is not ethical and not right for all businesses. But you know the dental space, you work with dentists all the time. Like, you're
Yep.
very well versed. You told me you did like 11,000 the other day, which was insanity when you said those numbers. But I do think, and that's why I wanted to pop on the podcast today to talk about your sexy six that you should have, but also, how can people be strategic as business owners to prepare for potential economic downfall? I think you play one of the greatest roles in that. of helping
Mhm.
people safeguard and cash flow. So do you kind of want to like take it? That was like what was the spurring topic, and now how you come in like stage left. Here comes Derek, guys, to help show some really cool things that a lot of our clients are doing if it feels right to them.
Yeah. Well, the first thing, Kiera, to prepare for the economy and everything is, I think the number one thing most dentists can do, because let's be honest, most dentists make pretty good money, right? A
Mhm.
lot of the clients I work with make enough that they're in the big boy tax brackets. So I think the first thing you can do that is immune to the economy is be efficient with your taxes. If you're overpaying taxes, and statistically, um, when I worked with Garrett Gunderson, we did an audit of a bunch of doctors and dentists, and I think 95% or more of them were overpaying taxes. Um, and I think it was like $11,500 per 100,000 of income, right? So a lot of our dentists, that would be 40, 50, $60,000 a year that they're overpaying taxes. And there's quite a bit more than that you can do, but just that one thing, like that's not going to change with the economy. It doesn't go up and down with the market. It doesn't change. I mean, they do things with the tax code every handful of years, but the reality is, like, being more efficient there will automatically put, probably for most dentists, 50 to $100,000 a year back in your pocket that you'll have more. So that's the first thing,
So
because
I'm going to ask, like, we talk
yeah,
about this as a blanket statement, but me sitting over here as like, but I don't know. My CPA tells me this is what I owe in taxes. How do I know
hmm
if I'm overpaying or underpaying on my taxes? I hope no one's underpaying. Pay your taxes, guys. Be happy to live in the place you live. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to do, but not
yeah.
excessively. Like, how do we know what's a good checks and balance on that?
Well, I think a general rule of thumb is have a second, and you got to shell out a little money for this. Don't do it in April, right? Do it in May or June, but go to a second CPA and have them pay them for their time to look at your books, see what they say, see what they see. Now, that's just a real simple sort of checks and balance. Let me make sure that we're not missing anything. A lot of different CPAs and a lot of different groups have things that they know about, their own little tricks. I mean, the tax code, it's really funny. There's about, I don't remember what it is. It's like 20 pages of how to pay taxes and like 4,000 pages of how not to pay taxes, right? All the tax code
I feel like
is
it's like
really
a
about.
really terrible game of Monopoly with like this instruction manual that I can't even get through to know how to play the game, but there's all these rules, is how I feel about taxes. I don't know if you agree with me, but I'm like, great, another rule that I didn't even know we could do and apply. And I could have like gone and like pass, like don't stop, just pass go. Like, oh, if I only would have known.
I know. I've been playing this game 15 years, and I would say once a quarter I stumble across something pretty significant where I'm like, oh. And usually it's I'm working with the client and they're telling me, hey, I'm working with my CPA or this advisor or this person, and they're having us do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Let's find out more, right? So we dig in. We're actually working on several, getting them vetted by attorneys right now. Some different tax strategies that we haven't really rolled out yet, but we're always checking into this stuff because, like you said, the rabbit hole is really deep. And just like everything, tax code is open to interpretation. So, it's understanding what you can and can't do. And a lot of times it just comes down to the details of not just what you do, but how you do it.
Right.
So, yeah, it does go pretty deep. And the nice thing is, Kiera, we can scrape a lot of the cream off the top, right? Like sort of the 80-20 rule. We can really help you with a lot of the really obvious stuff, and a lot of other CPAs can do that. I'm not a CPA, but we work with CPAs all the time. Our role kind of comes in on top of what a CPA does. So a CPA does your regular how to pay yourself, how to write things off, how to structure income, and different kinds of things. And there are a couple of tricks they can teach you. But on top of that, a lot of them don't help you create new tax write-offs or tax efficiency. We do come in and do that. Some investment advisors do that kind of stuff, and there are quite a few different tools out there that kind of, a lot of people assume their CPA is going to come to them with like, hey, you should do this tax strategy, put money over here or move it around like this. That's actually not what most CPAs do, right?
Yep.
So don't expect that of your CPA. That is more of a tax strategist, or a lot of investment advisors get into some of that. And there are different tools within entity structuring and donations and investments and other kinds of things. So there's not any one person who does all of that. What we do at our team is actually I work with a couple of different professionals because I can't be a pro at everything, right? Know
Right.
all the nuance of everything, just like I can't be an estate planning attorney. So we know enough to identify and help people with, hey, this is a good possibility, or this is something we should look at for your situation. Your CPA will usually be a part of that conversation. But at the end of the day, like what you're saying, to try and understand it all is pretty tough. I think finding people you trust, like good people who aren't just there to sell you a bill of goods, but really who understand that this is a long term relationship and that the better they do for you, the longer you're going to stick with them. They're not just in it like, I don't know. There's a lot of people who are turn and burn, right? They
Mhm.
find someone, do a transaction, and then they're down the road. But really find people who you feel good with, and get them to collaborate on your behalf. And I think you'll end up in a lot better situation. But that's one thing people can do in the economy is taxes. Taxes mean cash. Cash creates what I would call durability. In other words, your ability to sort of handle the bumps in life. I think the balance that we want to be aware of is everybody's trying to be efficient with their money, right? Get it
Mhm.
working, get it growing, get leverage, all these kinds of things. But efficiency and durability are kind of at odds with one another, right? The more efficient you get, the less durable you are. So the simplest example to kind of show that was the supply chain. It was super efficient. Goods showed up just in time. Everything was totally balanced on a razor's edge. And then COVID comes along, or a guy, drives a boat into the Suez or into the canal uh, over in the Middle East, and all of a sudden the whole supply chain falls apart because everything's balanced on a knife's edge, right?
Right.
Um, I know when people show you numbers, and we talked about ROE, return on emotion versus return on investment. Like everyone wants to show you the optimal ROI, like balance that thing on a knife's edge. That's not how life works. It's
No.
never a smooth, flat, paved road. It's dirt road, it's hills, it's turns, it's bumps. So you want to be efficient, but you also want to have durability. So having cash creates that, or access to cash, right? Truth be told, with everything going on with banking, like I would not be someone who would depend on bank lines of credit. I would want to have a
Mhm.
certain amount of cash. Like bank lines have their place, right? But I would not want them as my like catch me if I fall money. You definitely want to have good reserves in that. And so one of the tools we're using right now to help people if they don't have that, or to bolster that, is something like the employee retention credit. It's a one-time thing that happened during COVID. And basically the government came in and said, hey, we have all these rules and you've got to follow them. Like it's the law right now. And because of that, it may have impacted your business. So if it impacted your business and made you, the kind of the line right now is 10% less efficient or effective. So that doesn't mean you had to lose 10% in revenue or in profits. It just means that you had to deal with a lot of extra things that kind of slowed you down. And what I hear from a lot of my dentists, this is kind of the running joke, is like we saw less patients, but we made more money because everybody was getting braces because of masks, right? Or
Right.
getting ortho
Yep.
done, or like, people had extra money. So they did those procedures that are a little bit more expensive. So it looks on paper like you were more profitable, but in the meantime, you took a ton of risk. You had to deal with patients waiting out in the car. You had to deal with extra cleaning. You had to rearrange your schedules. You had to do all kinds of things. If someone was sick in the office, or their kid was sick, under normal circumstances, if your child gets sick, mom or dad still comes to work. With COVID, mom and dad had to quarantine for 14 days, even if they didn't ever get it.
Right.
Those kind of losses add up. So if even if you made money, you might still qualify for these credits, and you can get a substantial amount of money, up to about $26,000 per employee right now. And I won't go into crazy details on it, but at the end of the day, it's, if you've got 10 employees, that's pretty close to $250,000 that you could potentially get. And most people are pretty close to that. Like people
Mhm.
who work in dentistry get paid well enough, like all the employees and such, that they're hitting the caps, so that you as the employer who took all the risk, who paid your employees, who worked through it, that's what this is for. Is the government saying you had to work with one arm tied behind your back?
Right.
We're going to come in and pick up some of the wages, and we're going to reimburse those to you. So most of our dentists, that's on the low end, probably 50 or $75,000 for a very small office, all the way up. We do have some people who are getting more than seven figures back. And And that's a great way to kind of build your nest egg, build a bucket of cash right now that will really insulate you from whatever's going on in the world, because we don't quite know.
Mhm.
But I think there's pretty good consensus that the next couple of years won't be nearly as robust as the last few years, right? The economy was kind of on fire. Government dumped $6 trillion into the economy. So now we need to slow that down. I mean, it's actually a healthy thing. It's always painful, but it's, if you want to think of it in terms of health, like the next year or two might be a rest year. It's not the workout year, right? Let the
Right.
economy recover, let everybody kind of stabilize. And having cash is going to allow you to absorb any bumps that might come your way. So I think that's a great way to do that. So I think that's an easy one that most dentists are going to qualify for, because just if you're in healthcare, you had pretty strict mandates. You had to do a lot of cleaning. You had to do a lot of extra stuff that really did have an impact. And we're happy to talk through it with you, because I think for most dentists, it's a no brainer. There's no pressure to do it. Like if you feel like it's not, like you don't qualify, honestly, we're working with hundreds of clients at any given time. I think right now we're working with 300 or 400 clients actively. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me. We're not going to push you into something you don't want to do. But I think if you've heard about it, or if you're getting all the spam emails or the robocalls or whatever, and you want to talk to a real person who understands dentistry, we'd be happy to go through it with you. In 15 minutes, you'll have a pretty good idea of how it works, whether you qualify. And the nice part is there's no cost up front. So if you don't get money, you don't pay anything. So the risk is really very low. So,
Yeah.
we love to help if we can, but that'll put you in a good spot for the next couple of years.
And that was honestly something that I just feel people should take advantage of, in my opinion. Like, I remember feeling guilty, Derek, taking the PPP. Like, I felt ridiculously guilty. Like, but oh my gosh, like, I don't feel like I really need this. Like, we're doing well, our business is growing. But I also feel like at the same time, like, and there was a huge thing. I'm going to get real dicey, and I know this is going to get hot topic, and you're either going to like keep going or shut the podcast off. I'm not sure. But like when it was going to be that student loans were going to be forgiven and like reimbursement checks were going to be sent out, and like the threads on social media were hot and spicy. But my
Hmm.
thoughts were like, was I upset about it? Heck yeah. Jason and I freaking scrimped saved. Like, we paid off his freaking loans. I was angry. If you talk to Ryan Isaac, that was like one that just heated me more than most things.
Hmm.
um but just because that didn't bless me, why should I be upset about that for other people? And so I feel like these are opportunities that if it works for you and it feels right to you, why not take advantage of it? The money's there. People are getting it if you qualify for it. So I'm just a big person of like, you know what? If it's right for you and you feel good about it, I would at least explore it as a business owner to see if I qualify. Because for me, right now, as businesses, I think one of the best things you can do to prepare and safeguard your business, because if the business fails, we all fail, is to
Hmm.
have cash on hand right now. Cash is going to help you feel secure. Like, who knows, when that bank run hit in Silicon Valley, I was like, oh shoot. Like, I freaked out. I was worrying about my clients. Like, what do we do? I was reaching out to financial advisors, asking what
Hmm.
they're doing for their clients. We are going into uncertain times. And I feel like safeguarding and preparing and getting you that insulation, if you will, to where you could run lean and mean for a couple more months and continue on to serve and bless other people, I think is
Yep.
wise. So if that's with ERC, if that's with R&D, if that's with other things with tax strategy, by all means. But I would say make sure you are boosting up that cash right now, preparing and insulating your businesses, I think is a really wise thing. Which is why, Derek, I think you guys came up with the mastermind, not me chatting about it. It was a lot of the clients talking about it, because it is a great way to serve and to help in a way that really is ethical and honest. I get weird, like conservation easement, that doesn't jive with me, but it jives with some other people. So you as an individual have to decide what's right for you. But Derek, if people are interested, how can they connect with you just to see if they even qualify for it, and then make the decision from there, being an educated consumer as well?
Yeah, a real simple way is obviously go to our website, which is biglifefinancial.com. We have a special page for the dental A team because we work with you guys all the time. So it's biglifefinancial.com/DAT, either all capital or all lowercase. Don't mix them up or it doesn't work. But
Don't be
but
TAT, guys. Be DAT, DAT. DAT.
that
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's the easiest way. It'll put you right on my calendar, and we can make sure that we get in touch with you and help with whatever. But even if you have questions, things you're not sure about, you want a second opinion on something. I'm not an expert at everything. I wish I was, but I have access to really incredible, smart people. We've spent the last, I don't know, 10 plus years really putting together people who are great because as I work with clients, I'm looking at what are their needs and they ask me questions. And if I don't know, I go and find someone who's really smart. And after we've done this long enough, most of the questions that dentists have, we've got someone who can help them with. So,
Which is
even
awesome.
yeah, that's a big part of our sort of value add is just help the client doing what's right for you as a dentist, as the client, we think is always the most profitable thing for everybody.
Agreed. And the reason I love Derrick, for many reasons, is he knows Garrett Gunderson. If you guys have read Killing Sacred Cows, I was like, what? You guys are like that closely connected? I
Yeah.
want a signature, Derrick. I just think Garrett's an awesome person because he's very unconventional. But Derrick, I love that he works solely with dentists, like primarily with dentists. And so
Hmm.
working with that many dentists, I feel like for me, I like to niche. That's why I recommend HDA because they work primarily with dentists, dentist advisors because they work with dentists. Derrick with Big Life Financial because they primarily work with dentists. Dental A Team, we work primarily with dentists. So when you get people that are experts in their field, they're able to give you better guidance because they know the industry forwards and backwards. So, Derrick, I appreciate you. That was a real fun one for me. These are things that I felt so dumb on when I first started owning a business. And I found the more I expose myself, the more I learn, the more I ask questions. Don't be afraid to be quote unquote dumb in this area. Ask the questions because we don't know it. 4,000 pages of tax, forget that. I'm not about to go read that. But I'm going to go talk to
Nope.
people who know the industry and know it really well to help me. So, Derrick, I appreciate that. Guys, go check it out. biglifefinancial.com/DAT for dental A team. And Derrick, he's working with quite a few of our clients. He's been able to help a lot of our clients. And so if it makes sense for you guys, at least go check because I think safeguard your businesses now. I don't want to be talking to you in 6 months from now when you're saying, I wish I would have done that because you chose not to make the call or you chose not to execute to find out. And then you're wishing you would have. So don't be that person. Don't be the person who's sitting there building their house on the sand. Be the person building their house on the rock that's going to be secure when the floods come, when the rains come. That way you're prepared. So, Derrick, thank you for being here today. I super appreciate you.
Loved it, Kiera. Thanks for the conversation.
Awesome. All right, guys. As always, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the Dental 18 podcast. And that wraps it up for another episode of the Dental 18 podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.